Okay, so today we're going to dive into something a little bit heavier.
Yeah.
Those wildfires that just ripped through Los Angeles. I mean,
Yep.
they were really something else.
Absolutely.
And, we're going to look at this whole thing kind of through the lens of Patsy Palmer.
Okay.
Do you know her?
Yeah, yeah. Bianca Jackson, EastEnders.
Exactly.
Right.
So she's been living in Malibu for over a decade.
Wow.
But she splits her time between California and London for filming.
Gotcha.
And get this, she flew back to the UK for work just before these fires broke out.
Oh, wow.
Talk about timing, right?
I know, it's wild. Her house was actually threatened by another fire just weeks before this massive one,
Oh, really?
but thankfully it survived both of them. It's just incredible how these events can unfold.
I know it's like fate had other plans,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to wonder what that must be like being so far away during something like that.
Right. It's got to be incredibly stressful.
Absolutely. She
Yep.
actually posted this really raw, emotional video on Instagram
Oh,
talking about how helpless she felt being in London and not physically there.
yeah. I can only imagine that feeling of helplessness. Even when your property is safe,
Mhm.
the anxiety of not knowing what's happening, the fear for your community, it all takes a toll.
For sure. It's like natural disasters. They just disrupt our sense of safety and control.
Right. And that can really shake you to your core.
It really can.
Mm-hmm.
But I was struck by how she seems to be channeling that anxiety into something positive.
How so?
Well, in her video, she talks about relying a lot on meditation and mindfulness to cope.
Oh, that's interesting. Mindfulness practices can be so powerful in these types of situations,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with the aftermath of something like a natural disaster.
So how does that work?
Well, mindfulness, it's all about being present in the moment,
Yeah.
observing your thoughts and feelings without getting swept away by them.
I see.
Because when we're facing a crisis, our minds tend to race to the future or get stuck in the past.
Yeah, you start thinking about all the what ifs.
Exactly. But mindfulness helps bring you back to the present, to what you can control, your breath, your body, your surroundings. It helps ground you amidst all the chaos.
It's like finding that inner peace when everything around you feels chaotic.
Precisely. And it's interesting that you mentioned Patsy Palmer talking about the impermanence of material
Yeah,
possessions.
she really emphasized that.
That's a sentiment that resonates with so many people who've been through similar experiences. It's like a wake-up call that our sense of security shouldn't be tied to external things.
Right, because when those things are threatened, where do you turn?
Exactly. For some, it's community. For others, it's faith. And for people like Palmer, it seems like it's mindfulness that helps cultivate that inner peace and resilience.
It really makes you think about how these kinds of experiences can shift our priorities.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that these wildfires aren't isolated events. Climate change is a major factor in their increasing frequency and intensity.
That's a sobering thought. It really highlights how interconnected everything is. Our hearts go out to everyone who was affected by these fires. But it's also inspiring to see the community's resilience and the outpouring of support.
It is. It's amazing to see how communities rally together in times of need. Neighbors helping neighbors, volunteers offering aid, that collective determination to rebuild and recover. It speaks volumes about the human spirit.
It really does. Makes you wonder, though, could going through something like this, witnessing the fragility of what we often take for granted, could it lead to a change in values?
That's a great question.
Like maybe a stronger sense of community, a deeper appreciation for the present moment, maybe even a reevaluation of our relationship with material possessions.
I think it's definitely possible. Disasters can be powerful catalysts for change, both individually and collectively. They force us to re-examine what truly matters, to strengthen our bonds with our communities, and to take action to prevent similar events in the future.
There's a lot to unpack there,
Hmm.
but it's encouraging to think about that potential for transformation. It leaves us with some important questions to ponder, like how do we find meaning and resilience in a world that feels increasingly unpredictable?
Right.
What role does community play in helping us face these challenges?
Yeah.
And how can practices like mindfulness help us stay grounded when things get tough?
Those are questions worth exploring.
Definitely. Something for all of us to think about.
I agree.